Ready. Um, Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is the Environment Committee of the City of Rehoboth Beach, being held, September 15th. It is 10:30 a.m., and I call this meeting to order. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Charlie Garlow.
Present.
Heather Metz.
Here.
Eric Seward is absent. Joe Vesio.
Here.
Mary Peck is absent. Nettie Green.
Present.
We have a quorum and can formally conduct business today. I want to thank members of the public that are here and also listening online, virtually, and Ann Womack, who is the city secretary and helping this meeting go off. First, we're going to approve minutes from the August 18th meeting. They were emailed to you as well as presented hard copy here. Is there any questions, comments, revisions?
I have a comment, if I may. There's on the second page, first bullet, it says for larger scale equipment, they rely on gas-powered company because the technology, I think they meant tools or gear or equipment or something there, rather than the word company.
Powered tools. Noted.
No biggie.
Does anyone have anything else? Then I would accept a motion to approve the minutes with the cross out of company and addition of tools on page 2.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And the meeting minutes are approved. I'd like to give, I'm sorry. On streets and transportation, I have a item that says updates, and on this one, I don't. So every time I copy and paste the new agendas, I forget to add updates. So I'll give some updates at the end. No correspondence is identified. And first item on old business is an update on offshore wind farms. As I've mentioned, the mayor and I have been working hard to establish a special meeting where we obtain information and have some panel discussions and question and answers with experts. So as I mentioned, and I had you guys save the date, September 27th at 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. will be that special meeting of the mayor and commissioners. We're very fortunate, and I think it's unprecedented, the amount of participation we will have. We will have representatives from BOEM, representatives from the state of Delaware, Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control. We have representatives from the two companies that have the lease areas, US Wind and Ørsted. We have a representative from Ocean City, a representative from Cesar Rodney Institute, and multiple presenters associated with the University of Delaware in different capacities. We will have a moderator moderate this event for us and conduct a question and answer period. I want to be, this special meeting is going to be very, very specific in us obtaining information. It's not going to be for opinions or pro-wind, against wind. That's certainly not what, and in fact, we're not even going to allow public comment for opinions. We will allow questions to be submitted in writing, and the moderator will collect those and try to bunch multiple questions together and ask the appropriate panelist to answer. We also, because I think the group that we've got together is unprecedented and we've got very limited room here, we will probably have an overflow room in the third floor where we'll have the TVs, live streaming and everything like that, and questions can also be submitted in writing up there. We'll have someone going back and forth. So I very much want to, and the room here, the commissioner's room, we're going to focus on folks associated with the city of Rehoboth Beach, this committee, Beach and Boardwalk Committee, the mayor and commissioners, folks that we've invited from the Association of Coastal Towns, the mayors and town managers of those, our federal delegates, and our local representatives. So we're going to encourage everyone else to participate and watch virtually. We will have that overflow room here. So I just want to throw all of that out there. And for the media that's listening right now, we will have a press release going out most likely later today or early tomorrow morning. So I'm going to ask you to wait until that press release goes out before contacting myself or the mayor or city staff for further questions. I think a lot of that will be clarified in the press release that's submitted. So
Ed, quick question. When you said questions submitted in writing, is that real time or can they submit them ahead of time?
it'll be real time.
Okay.
Yeah, during the presentation, we'll accept written questions on index cards.
I'm not going to be here. Oh, I wish I were. But will this be Zoomed?
It will be Zoomed. It'll be on the website, the normal, it's not Zoom, whatever else we use. I think it's a YouTube channel, something like that. And it will also be recorded like any other commissioners meeting.
I'd like to check with you about how to do that, because I really would like to take it in.
Will there be a recording
Yeah, absolutely.
you can
Yeah,
see
it'll
later.
be recorded, yeah.
Okay.
if need be?
So I thought you had said before that questions need to be submitted in advance by a certain date, but is that not the case anymore?
No, I think previously I was asking for feedback from you of what types of questions we want answered. But during the meeting, certainly if you want to submit questions in advance, but we'll be taking written questions throughout the meeting.
Okay, should I still submit my written questions
Yeah,
to you
yeah,
then?
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
One more thing. That sounds like an incredible panel of experts, but I have a suggestion for maybe one other entity that we might want to be there, which is maybe somebody from Delmarva Power. Because a lot of my questions actually have to do with their end of things and not really understanding what the whole interface is going to look like. I don't want to put more work on you. If there's something I can do on that end to, I don't know who to call, but.
Yeah, we're pretty jam-packed, so I don't know if it's possible, but I'll certainly speak to the mayor and the city manager. The three of us have kind of been putting this together. I will say that in other presentations I've been to, the wind farm companies have been pretty knowledgeable in providing some of that information on how the power is going into the grid.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's exactly the questions that you have, but I do know that some of that has been
From a
been talked about.
practical standpoint, it would seem like their input would be really important.
We'll see what we can do.
And are we thinking the meeting will be 3 hours or so, like all morning?
We're guessing 9 to 1 p.m.
Okay.
Do you need help running back and forth with these questions from the other room upstairs? Can we help in that regard, or is city staff going to take care of it?
I think we're going to utilize myself and city staff, but stay tuned. If we need help and volunteers, I will certainly be asking. Any other questions about that? It's very exciting, and I'm very, very happy we've got the group of panelists that we do. It's very much
Has
unprecedented.
DENREC been invited? I mean, is DENREC available?
That's,
Yeah, DENREC
aware?
is
Okay,
participating.
good,
Yep.
Good.
Any comments or questions from the public? Okay, great. With that, I am going to go to the next order of business, which is discussion related to gas-powered landscape equipment and the use of them in the city of Rehoboth Beach. We've had multiple meetings discussing this, and we've received input from the city arborist, a few different tree and landscape companies. So what is, I will pull up on the screen, which Mary Peck just sent me yesterday, her recommendation on the language for the code. So let me pull that up. But Charlie or Nettie, if you want to start the conversation.
Nettie, do you want to begin a conversation? You want me to kick it off?
The conversation for what? Gas?
We're talking about the gas-powered lawn equipment.
No, help yourself.
Okay, I'll just review some of my thoughts,
Oh,
which
it's from the
were
minutes?
in the minutes.
Oh, gotcha.
You may note these extended minutes. If you don't have a copy, we'll get you one. There's a good detail. Thank you for our secretary for detailing all the comments. Many of them were very favorable to the idea of using electric and battery-powered equipment. They noted that possible inability to chop some of the biggest trees with the sort of equipment they have available now, but the theory was that this requirement would take place, or would become effective, as you can see on the wall over there, in the end of 2025. So they have a number of years between now and then for the technology to improve, and the fact that our brother city, Lewis, right up the way, is having a nearly identical requirement that will make all of the people who are involved in this industry have two, if you will, customers, at least, if not more, for the new non-gas, electric-powered lawnmower equipment and lawn equipment generally. So it's my hope that the improving technology will have lots of compliant equipment. The gear will be there, and it'll make for a much better environment. Commissioner, did you want to
Yeah.
make a comment?
Could you clarify, again, this is Mary Peck's recommendation. It is very similar to the city of Lewis, which I can pull up in a moment. But what would be effective, and I'm not sure that I agree with making it December 31st of this year, but what would be included in phase one?
I've often been confused about that as well. This is something Lewis came up with, so we wanted to mirror what Lewis was talking about. The handheld gasoline equipment, other than leaf blowers. Now we're trying to figure out what is it that's other than leaf blowers, chainsaws, and string equipment.
Just going to ask that.
Very limited. I can imagine there might be some. Help me out here. Anybody?
Is it a push mower? Is that what we would be including in this?
I would think that a push mower, that an electric push mower, could qualify by being required to do something by 2022.
Well, it says at the bottom that they're exempt.
Thank you, Heather.
Very last line, Chief.
Gasoline-powered lawn mowers are exempt from this subsection. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean you're allowed to use your gas-powered lawnmower forever, no matter how much pollution it puts out? I don't know that that is very helpful. I'd be glad to strike that last sentence, frankly. I don't know quite why it's there. Other thoughts?
I thought we also discussed sort of separating the contractors from the homeowners in some manner.
That was my hope.
Don't see that reflected here either, yeah, so maybe we need to
I don't
rewrite
want to
that.
force, a homeowner to go out and buy a new piece of equipment if they don't need to. It's at least an expensive equipment. So I would like to see the contractors and residents be treated separately in the phase out. Let me just. Mary Peck in her comments here say, based on the testimony we heard last month, I suggest doing exactly what Lewis has done, but change December 1, 22 to December 31st, 2023. Glad we can add, also we can add section C that says something like, in the case of tree removal approved by the city arborist, if the city arborist determines that the removal of the tree would be unsafe to do with an electric equipment, a gas-powered chainsaw may be used. Again, this doesn't get to my hope of separating residents from the city itself as well as contractors.
Perhaps we could add a sentence there in that B, which would talk about for commercial lawn care companies, effective December 31st, 2025. Leaf blowers, chainsaws, et cetera, shall not be operated.
Are we all in agreement that they should be separated?
think
I
they
think
should.
so, yes.
You mean the city, the contractors and residents
I
should
s-
be
I-
separated?
I see the city and contractors that have a business license to do work in the city as one,
I do too.
and then residents that have their own equipment as separate.
Yeah, and I think that it should be, okay, I think the city and the contractors should be first as an example, and then residents later. And I really don't feel that 2025 is too much to ask residents to come up with this and get rid of the gas-powered lawnmowers by 2025 if the state and contractors are doing it. I mean, if the city and contractors are doing it.
I don't disagree.
It occurs to me that some of the noise that comes from this equipment, leaf blowers, for example, could be pretty noisy, even if it's me and my residence using a gas-powered
Exactly.
leaf blower. That's where I've heard the most complaints. A string trimmer doesn't really make all that much noise.
Yeah.
So maybe we could separate out some of the equipment that residents would have to comply with the electric mandate.
I think that gets really sticky. You're, it's like you're going in with a toothpick, kind of. I think my feeling is the contractors in the city first, and then however we decide a date, and then everybody by 2025.
Well, when I read paragraph B, the first sentence seems to be a nothing burger, because what other equipment is there that's handheld other than leaf blowers, chainsaws, and string trimmers? What are,
Maybe she means including.
I think I remember looking at some of the language from the Lewis ordinance, and it had this kind of a confusion in it, frankly.
Yeah, that's very good.
We can change that.
I
to-
can't think of any other equipment that
Right,
would be
I think
handheld.
it's
can't.
written backwards.
I can't either. I think including. Yeah.
Hedge trimmers could qualify for that, but hedge trimmers really don't make a lot of noise. I mean, I have an electric hedge trimmer at my house.
Oh, you know what? It doesn't say
So-
other than, it just says leaf blowers.
This is the actual ordinance for Lewis.
But yeah, it does say other than leaf
Oh,
blowers,
it does say other
chainsaw,
than,
and
yeah.
string trimmers.
Yeah, that's weird.
Right, that's the confusion that was, in my mind, still existing in that language. What is it that's covered by 2022 under the Lewis ordinance? Not much.
But then then they go on to say, though, effective on December 31st, 2025, leaf blowers, chainsaws, and string trimmers shall not be operated. So maybe they're giving them a buffer there, a couple of year buffer to comply. I just think it's confusing.
But nothing really goes into effect on December 31st, because that's the way it is now, so that's.
Yeah, yeah.
I would strike that first sentence saying
Confusing.
effective 2022, because it doesn't really apply to any equipment that we can think of.
Unless you change other than to including.
I
Well,
don't
then
think
you-
I don't think we're looking at making the ban effective on December 31st,
Yeah, no,
2022. That's
so
a
Ms.
little
No,
soon.
so Mary moved it a year, correct?
Yeah, so it would be 23 is her recommendation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's more realistic. I really do.
Well, it's-
And you think that the larger things should then be,
And so we're talking about for the city, correct? And then
and
there would be a
commercial.
separate paragraph for residential.
Well, maybe
That would
maybe
be
we
my
should
hope.
start with, number one, start with who this is going to apply to. And I kind of agree with you, Nettie, that I hate to make it more complicated, but I feel like the city should be its own category, because if you want the pleasure of a city contract, you should meet whatever their requirements are. And since we have some control over that and we can set that precedent, I think maybe we should take advantage of that and separate that out. I don't think that's asking too much. I think it's asking a lot to tell all the contractors that operate within the city, you've got to throw away your old equipment and buy new equipment by whatever date we decide. That's a lot. They should have the opportunity to get the useful life out of that equipment so they don't, their sunk costs aren't gone and things like that, business decisions like that. But, and again, to not make it more complicated, but it feels like that's something we can do. And then the homeowners need to definitely be another category. I mean, I don't think you can expect people to just, and then there's a cost to that too. I'm just gonna throw away my old thing and buy a new one. So there has to be some,
Maybe the
pattern.
December 2023 for the city, December 24 for contractors, December 25 for everyone. And just be simple about it.
And a contractor that's working for the city could use electric equipment for city work and still be using gas-powered for their private
work. Sure.
clients and kind of phase it out that way. So
Yeah, that's
it
a good
wouldn't be
idea.
an
They
undue
can still
burden.
use
on
it,
them.
get its useful life.
I mean, I think we heard from many of the contractors that they are already phasing in this electric
Yeah, which
equipment,
is
and
great.
it's very favorable for them anyway.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
you heard from-
with the exception of the big saws and the driving lawnmowers.
Well, we heard from Sposato, right? We didn't hear from the guy that I inherited from the people we bought the house from, it's him and his son. He's got 3 lawnmowers. You know, we didn't hear from everybody. So for some of those people, buying all new lawn equipment is gonna be a bigger burden than for somebody like Sposato who can just keep phasing things through. Yeah. So I think, I like my lawn guy, so, you know.
Yeah, and I think like Heather says, it's a lot to ask, you know, that even though people are phasing it in, it's a lot to ask to have the enforcement.
If they know it's coming,
yeah.
they can plan for it, and that's what we want. We want
Right.
them to plan for that.
Why don't we hear from members of the public? Have anything? Let me just
Make sure it's on.
mentioning your name and your
Certainly. My name is Paul Warren. I live at 53 Surf Avenue. First of all, I want to congratulate you and thank you for exploring this issue, and clearly your intent is to adopt some legislation. I think it goes without saying why we need it. The noise of it is horrid. It affects all of our lives continually. And I've written in the past to you all and to the mayor and to the other commissioners and to express my concern, particularly being age 72, the elderly's ears can be much more sensitive to the noise of this equipment. And as a result, it has a more powerful effect. This has been my concern, and it's why I have written. There are many other issues, as you all know, and I suspect you have addressed. The amount of pollution for 2-stroke engines is horrid. It is anachronism and should be eliminated. Over 100 cities growing every day have banned this equipment. Currently, not in 3 years, currently. We are the nation's summer capital. You should know that the nation's capital, which is where I am from, has banned them currently. They do not allow them. They do not allow the sale of them. Yet, and as a result, I would encourage you to move this schedule up. I would say not 2025, I would say 2024. And the issue is we're talking about, as you say, when you talk about the contractors and having to get new equipment, this sort of thing, the price of gasoline over a short period will pay for their new equipment. And the other thing is the mom and pop outfits that are doing the lawns, if they're not wearing headphones, they are air protection, they are damaging the ears of those individuals, many of whom are from other countries, many of whom are desperate for the income, and they are sadly, and I see it every day, and you will too, are not wearing those things. They are permanently damaging their ears. Now, when I see that, what are they doing to my ears? The guy next door to me, when he does this, I can hear it, as you all can. If there's 2 guys out there blowing and it's coming into my house. It's rattling things. Now, let me say this. For a year, I used somebody who did not use, who you only use electric. He disappeared, and I had to go back to what I'm doing. But I will not allow them to do 2 guys blowing at once. That violates, and by the way, all of this violates the noise ordinance of the city of Rehoboth Beach and the state of Delaware. In the city of Rehoboth Beach, it's 74 decibels. Every time they are violating that. And I guarantee you, if you go out there now and you just put, and by the way, you can download a noise meter for any purpose, and you will see that they are violating that every day. And that's not even being addressed here. But, and you don't want to get into an enforcement issue and calling the police or whatever, but that's what's currently happening. So there's other issues here. All other communities are adopting this, and I would urge you to do it sooner rather than later. The landscapers, let me address one other issue here. The only reason why you need a gas-driven leaf blower now, or why they would contend it, is if you have a very large lawn. It uses up more battery to do it, and it isn't quite as powerful. Look around Rehoboth Beach. There are not the large lawns we're talking about. There are a few, but the majority of us have small lawns. You do not need them. The exceptions, I could see other communities that have very large lawns, but that's not our community. So these are the issues that I would urge you to move this up and not just mirror Lewis. Lewis extended it out because they wanted to give they started focusing on this several years ago. They did this to give the contractors more time to work it out. Well, the contractors now want to go battery-driven because of the cost of gasoline. Let's give them, and let's put an additional burden on them. The contractors are not residents of Rehoboth Beach. We are the residents. Their employees are largely not. If they are, God bless them, and if the contractors are, God bless them, but we have to listen to this, and we shouldn't have to. In any event, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Bless you for addressing this issue, and I look forward to when I do not have to listen to that noise, as I'm sure all of you do. There is nobody who wants that noise. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
You may be pleased to note that we've had other citizen commenters echoing your sentiments, and we've had nobody testifying in the other direction, that they love the noise, or they want to hear more of the noise, or anything along that
All
line.
gasoline.
Yes.
David?
Dave Diefendorfer, city resident. So I would also like to thank you guys for taking up this topic. It's an important topic. I know you don't have the final wording done there, but Ed, could you roll down there where you talked about the, I'm sorry, I thought you could do it from there. There was something in there where it talked about, except where it's unsafe to do the trees. Yeah, keep going down a little farther.
Yeah, there it is above the
No.
picture, right?
Yeah, it would be unsafe to do with, I'm not sure unsafe is the correct word. I'm not trying to wordsmith this because I know you have to fix this. I'm not sure unsafe is the right word, whether it's impractical. I'm sure you could get, I think it's impractical, or it can't cut it down, or it extends it beyond the capability of the equipment, or something to that effect. It's not unsafe. That's just my opinion on that. I know you're not done yet with this wording. I'm sure you have to reword several things. And the other thing was, I agree with what's being done here with the noise, with the especially the leaf blowers. The leaf blowers, the gas-powered leaf blowers, are unbelievably loud. But I would suggest that the electric, like the gas-powered lawnmowers for the residents, I would push that out a little bit. I just don't think it's fair. Some of the states are going this way, but now with the gas-powered or cars mandating that they can't be sold, I would strongly disagree with forcing a resident to change to a get rid of their gas-powered mower right away. And then eventually, when it fails, they'll probably end up replacing it with a electric lawnmower. But I would disagree with mandating this on the residents.
Do you think a 3-year window is enough time? Maybe not for a mandate, but for a strongly suggested?
Strongly suggested, what does that really do? I mean, it doesn't really tell you. You
But
can
you, but you
suggest
think a
anything.
mandate is totally?
I personally, for the residents in the small yard and throwing your lawnmower away that you've purchased, maybe somebody just purchased a $700 lawnmower last year. I don't think it's fair for a city resident. They're not the ones generating the massive amount of noise as the contractors are with those huge leaf blowers. And I would agree with the noise. I'm in the Navy, so I wear double hearing protection all the time, so I have good hearing. So, but you're right, the contractors probably are not using that hearing. So, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the paragraph that Dave was talking about, we could probably wordsmith it to say something like impractical or unsafe.
What I originally thought is, that language comes from the tree removal companies only being able to use a certain size blade. Anything above that, the technology is not good enough to use it. So I don't know why we would not just have a size limitation on, if it's this size and under, it must be electric. If it is larger than that for a larger job, we're not implementing that at this time.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Could we rephrase that by saying that if, when the compliant date comes, the technology is not yet on the market, they can apply for a waiver of a limited time period so they just don't get a waiver forever? We want to keep their, nose to the grindstone, if you will.
They do have to get a permit to cut down the trees, right? And hopefully we're not issuing too many of those. So.
So
They do.
That's
we're,
interesting
we're
idea,
kind of we're
Charlie.
kind of all over the place. So let's start from
Yeah.
the beginning here.
Yeah.
Are we in agreement that the city and contractors should be considered one and the same? Or even those should be separate?
I agree with Nettie. I think they should be separate.
I think separate, but I agree with Mr. Hurd that it would be good to move it up and say 2022, 2023, 2024. Move up the whole thing.
So we
because
would
people are
have-
already coming to this.
I just want to be clear then, we would have 3 different categories: the city, contractors, and residents. Is that what everyone's saying?
Yes.
Well, I could go with 2 categories, trying to keep thinking simple.
I-
Have the
I-
city and the
I agree with
contractors go
that.
together to comply by a date certain, and then residents a later date certain. Keeps it simpler. I don't know that we have to
I
have
still disagree. I think that it's very reasonable for the city to say, if we're going to give you a contract, these are our expectations, and this is the type of equipment you can use, and you get an immediate result. And I think that's going to help a lot. I don't know if I live on Bayard, and they come and mow, the city does, and it's loud. I get it, because they use the electric trimmers and all of that, and that's something we can see an immediate result quicker. And I think that's well within our rights. It's not a mandate to a private property owner. It's city contract, and I think that's low-hanging fruit. We should grab it and do it.
So then in the contractor category, Heather, should we then say something like, for all city business, they must use electric equipment. However, for private clients, they can phase it out? Is that why?
Well, I guess I'm differentiating, make sure I'm saying the right thing. I don't want to confuse it even more. So when the city either uses their own employees or hires contractors and pays them directly, that's the category. Is that the category you were thinking, Nettie, when you say, yeah? Yeah. So if the city hires Spazzato to do a job, they have to use electric.
However, other than city business, Spazzato can continue
Well,
to
then
use gas for-
then we would do the phase-in.
Yeah,
They would be the
okay.
separate, the second
We're on the same
category,
page,
and then the
that's what I was
homeowners would be the third category.
So we're encouraging and modeling. We're modeling and encouraging, basically,
Yeah.
as a city. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like the city would go first and
Yes.
show good leadership, and showing a good example for the rest of everybody.
Yes.
That's the idea. Okay.
But as far as
So we're going to
enforcement-
have city-owned contracts and employees as one category. business license contractors for private as a separate category. And then residents as a third category. Okay, now let's focus on start dates. The initial phase-out start date. I think Mary suggested December 31st, 2023. Do we think that's an ample time for the city?
I think so, because a lot of the city work is
15
done by the
months.
contractors, and a lot of the contractors said they have a good deal of the electrical equipment already. So they're pretty much ready to go for
Right,
the
we
city's
may
work.
want to sync that up with when the contracts are let, so that you're giving, if you advertise a contract in March, that you get it effective before that, so that they can plan their bid based on what the
Okay, well,
requirements are.
let's say,
I don't know when they're let, so. I know it's making it more complicated, I'm sorry.
But if we say December 2023, practically speaking, they're not going to be using lawn equipment until April, May. So that gives them an additional 4 months or so beyond that date. They're not going to be doing lawn maintenance in January, February, March. So that gives them a little extra time.
if you would prefer to put in or a date of renewal, whichever is sooner, I'm fine with that.
We could do a compromise and say June, the end of June 2023, and then the end of June 2024, end of June 2025, and have a compromise between those.
That's kind of right in the middle of mowing season. Wouldn't you want it before?
No, it was June.
Yeah.
No. I don't care.
Well, how do you like the idea that Commissioner was talking about, having by this date or the date of the contract, whichever is earlier? You think that's good?
Okay.
Everyone? Okay, settled. Now, what equipment are we looking at in phase one? Because what is presented here doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I think paragraph B, if you change the wording other than to including, that makes more sense to me.
Now, I will say, the so leaf blowers was a problem for the tree companies. The technology is not yet there to do some of the larger items that falls from tree pruning or removal. Do we want to exclude leaf blowers for that purpose or not?
I think leaf blowers is one of the major problems, as we've heard from our testimony today and previously. So the sooner we can get that taken care of, the better.
So without any exceptions, leaf blowers. Everyone in agreement with that?
I agree with that, but wasn't Liz Lingo the one who was saying that she doesn't feel that the big contractors have that the electric powered leaf blowers aren't going to be what they need to do the work? Was that what she was saying?
My recollection is that I think everyone agreed that for basic residential use, the electric-powered leaf blowers are fine. For bigger commercial jobs and tree removal, it's not.
Gotcha.
They're just not powerful enough. That is my recollection.
Well, as noted, we really don't have a lot of those in the city of Rehoboth. We don't have giant lawns, so maybe we don't need to worry about that.
They do seem to be the
I
big
don't live in
culprit.
the city, so what makes a huge noise out where we are with tree removal are the trucks that eat up all the trees, and that is a horrible noise.
I don't think there's anything we're gonna be able to do about
that's
that.
Yeah, the wood chippers of the trucks,
Yeah, that's,
yeah, and I don't think that's electric powered.
Well, let's just try to stay focused on what
Okay.
is going to be included in this date.
Well, there's three things listed here: leaf blowers, chainsaws, string trimmers. In my mind, string trimmers is the least of the problem, but I'm happy to leave it in there. The other thing
They're
that's
allowed to.
excluded, though, are the lawnmowers. That's a fourth thing.
Didn't they, I'm sorry, Charlie, go
Go ahead.
ahead. Didn't they also mention power pruners, something like that? That snip, larger limbs or larger branches?
If they are
I seem to
powered,
remember like power pruners being one of the categories
I think that would be
also.
under a chainsaw idea. They have to crawl up the tree
could
with
be.
a chainsaw and snip off some of the branches that might be problematic.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, leaf blowers, chainsaw, string mowers. I think that we should have a size on the chainsaw based on everything that we heard from the companies, but I'll defer to you guys on that.
I think they mentioned the 14-inch saw is what they have that's electric, which works, but if it's a bigger tree than that, they'd have to use their gasoline. If you want to accept that for now, and then we can come back and visit it again, later, if there is better equipment that comes on the market.
The size of the tree or the blade, Charlie? I'm sorry.
It's the blade.
The size of the blade,
The blade, okay.
well, the size of the tree determines whether you could use a small or a larger blade. Bigger tree, you're going to have to use the bigger blade.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that December 31st, 23, leaf blowers, chainsaws, 14 inches or smaller, string trimmers, and push mowers, after that date, they would be prohibited from the use by city staff or contractors. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Is there a phase 2 date, and would it include anything? I mean, obviously, we're anything larger than a 14-inch chainsaw and ride mowers are the only two things that I can think of that are not included here.
I mean, I think as technology changes, we'd have to revisit. If suddenly the larger equipment does become feasible to use with battery power, then we could come back to that.
Well, as Mr. Warren was pointing out, in the city of Washington DC, and perhaps others, they're already doing it. The equipment is already available if you just want to shell out the money to buy the equipment that might be more expensive. So for us to take a more lenient approach doesn't seem unreasonable to me.
So do we remain silent, or do we add in a phase 2 date for those items?
I think we add in a phase 2. Each year, just
What date do we want to use for those?
for the contractors.
I'm still on city.
Oh,
I'm still on city. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to push this along.
Yeah,
I had
I
hoped
think
that
it
some
should
of our
be-
previous discussions was already written out on this.
We're all struggling, thank you, Commissioner, to
Yeah.
struggle with us. How about
Yeah.
2025 is the second phase date? Is that helpful? Second phase for the longer bladed chainsaws and the riding lawnmowers?
I think that's too soon based on what we've heard about the technology.
It's just not,
We could say that would be the date, and then if that technology hasn't appeared by that time, we could grant them a waiver for another year without having to come back and revisit this issue and pass another.
Yeah, I guess the question is
Ordinance.
it better to add something now and then have to modify it, or is it better to leave it out and add it in later? That's whatever you think, Commissioner.
I would rather just use something that seems to be more realistic than 25, 27, 28.
For the larger.
For the larger-
for like the
chainsaws and the
riding
lawnmowers.
mowers, things like that.
And I also, I want to be a leader, but I also don't want to force the city to fork over $20,000
Yeah,
on
they're
a
gonna-
new
people are gonna
ride
get
mower
upset.
if the one we currently have is perfectly fine.
So you're thinking
27
26 or
sounds-
7, is that what you said?
I said 7 or 8.
27?
Yeah, let's
For the
try that.
larger
Okay.
chainsaws and the riding lawnmowers? I can live with that.
And I can guarantee you that the mayor and commissioners are going to just pick this apart.
Okay.
It's only a recommendation from us. They're the ones who decide.
All right, let's go on to category 2.
The contract.
Contractors that have business licensing for residential use or for personal contracts. Leaf blowers, chainsaws, under 14 inches, string trimmers, and push mowers. What date do we want to use?
Same date?
Well, that's why I asked, would we consider all of these?
Do you think
in
it's
the same
reasonable to give them
category?
an extra year or an extra 2 years based on kind of the dates we've been playing with here?
I think an extra year. I think let's make it as simple as we can and just include the same thing we're including for the city. And do it the next year and then for everyone the following year.
The city's initial compliance date is December 31st of 2023 for the smaller stuff, about 24 for the contractors for the same sorts of requirements.
Right,
And for residents, 25?
25.
That's a phase-in, right?
It is a
For
phasing.
the larger
going
equipment,
for it.
do we want to do the same, just 1 year out? On each of those
Sounds good to me.
28 and 29
29,
for residents.
so 27,
Yeah, it's
28
giving
and
plenty of
29.
notice, and it's more of a phase-in approach than a mandate. I don't know if you'd agree.
Do we want to have a category for exceptions? Or have some type of waiver, hardship waiver? I don't know that other municipalities or other codes have it. Do we want to consider it?
I would say yes, because I think there are definitely some residents of the city who are going to be upset about this.
If my grandmother doesn't want to replace her lawnmower, I'm not going to force her to.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm not going to call the code enforcement people and,
Yeah, well, and I
Go
also think
after her.
we're not DC, we're a small community where we know each other. And if a resident feels like they can come to the city and say, hey, I have these extenuating circumstances, can you look at my case? That's why we're Rehoboth and not Washington DC.
Any request for a waiver would be heard by this body here to approve or grant them? No?
we absolutely cannot be a
No, we don't make laws.
enforcement or,
Not enforcing, we're granting waivers, which is the opposite of
yeah,
enforcement.
it makes us into a judicial body, in which we
Yes,
don't want.
no,
I would leave it up to
Manager.
the city manager,
Okay.
and if they want to give the discretion to the city arborist, then that's
I agree with you.
on them.
Yeah.
It makes it a little more palatable, it seems less mandate-ish, and we still get the phase-in that we're looking for.
Yeah.
We could have waiver for good cause shown to be determined by the city manager should be available.
Do we want to say, does that cover anything, or do we need to add anything about this tree removal stuff?
Well, that waiver would be available to, say, a large contractor that had to come in and cut down multiple trees in the future and needed to use gas-powered equipment. Would that, just throwing out an example, but would that be available to a contractor too, or just to a resident, the waiver?
I would think the waiver ought to be available to any of
Yeah.
the
So that,
parties
so then
if they got a good cause.
it's covered. If somebody's gonna come in and do a big job and they need to use big machines, there you go.
Okay. Can I task someone with taking all of this information and working with Mary to revise this?
I'd be glad to work with Mary on new language.
Thank you. And we may just want to do some research on if other municipalities have some type of waiver, or, and if there's other types of equipment that we're missing here. I can't think of anything, but I've never even mowed a lawn before, so.
Oh, you're missing out.
There
It's
you There you
it's a
go.
great experience.
Were you were raised in this country or?
Well, I was a little kid that had allergies, and I'd always be like, I can't do it. All right, let's take more comments from the members of the public.
Mr. Warren.
I'd like to ask a question. Basically, the main question is, let's see, is it true that the city itself, any equipment it has would be affected by this?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does this include, they have a sidewalk vacuum that they use every day that's gasoline powered, and it is very loud. So I'm wondering about that thing.
If you'll allow me, I'll do some research on that, and then we will insert it into this ordinance as appropriate.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just don't know. Yeah. David, anything more from you?
President. So is my understanding that you're going to put this together and then you'll review it again for everybody? 'Cause
I'm hoping at our next meeting, this is revised and we can review it again. And I'd like mom and pop contractors and maybe a couple residents to come and weigh in. I mean, we keep advertising and talking about it, and the Cape Gazette has reported on it, but we've got 2 people that are
Yep,
showing up to
yep.
meetings, so.
Now's your chance.
I mean, we heard from
Everybody out
one
there.
mom and pop contractor, but he was all electric.
He was all electric.
Yeah, it was Ed O'Connor, right?
It would be nice to see.
I'd be
what
very
the
curious
phase-
what my guy would say. He's very shy. I don't know if he would come, though.
Well, at least if you could ask
I
him
will,
and
I'll
relay
ask
the
him.
information, his
Yeah.
response.
Or
that would
I'll
be
at least
helpful.
ask him and then maybe report back what he says.
That would be great.
Because my other point was, this is a confusing thing, and we want to make sure we get it right.
Yeah.
You know, so let's get it out there, let everybody look at it, and get
Yeah.
a lot of good ideas from people. I think you'll make it better.
Yeah, and I can assure you, if we vote to recommend this to the mayor and commissioners, it's going to get a whole nother set of
Other side of that.
review and eyes and everything.
Okay, and the last thing, we're just talking about landscaping equipment right now, because there are, you have the mosquito authority guys that come out and they blow for mosquitoes, and the vacuum machine that he talked about, that's not landscaping equipment. So just something else to throw out, and I'm not even suggesting you tackle that, but that's in, you might want to break out other categories. I mean, if you're going that way. So.
If someone wants to do research and add other types of home care
I'm not
equipment,
suggesting that at all.
Pesticide control, that,
I'm not suggesting that at all, but I'm just saying that someone's going to come, well, what about these guys? And what about this guy? What about this guy? But if you keep it just to landscaping equipment for right now, you might save yourself a lot of trouble and actually get this passed.
Yeah.
So that's all I had. Thank
And
you.
it also might be a model for other types of equipment. I mean, if the landscaping equipment happens, it's like,
And there,
this is coming.
however you rewrite this, there should be a catch-all, so anything not otherwise mentioned is included in phase 2 or something like that. Since we're specifically mentioning things, there should be a catch-all somewhere.
Right.
Okay, I'll add that in.
Yeah.
You may be interested to note that we have a pollinators proposal. We haven't talked about it yet, but that may discuss your mosquito spray and poisons and stuff.
Is there any other comments about this topic? Okay. Well then, I would, Charlie, I thank you for talking to Mary and revising this and bringing it back to us at our next meeting. And again, if we can personally encourage some folks to come to the next meeting. And with that, I also just want to let you guys know, I'm going back to old business A, I apologize. At our next meeting, and perhaps we may need to have a special meeting, I'll consult with Ann and the mayor if we should or not. But we want the opinion of this body after hearing the information from the wind farm, the offshore wind panel discussion. So the expectation is that the Beach and Boardwalk Committee and this Environment Committee would, our next meeting following that, present that special meeting, that we discuss it and give any feedback to the mayor and commissioners to consider. And then the mayor and commissioners will have our own discussion and invite opinions and more feedback from the public.
Wow.
So I just want to make sure that that's on everyone's radar, because I do want to push some of this stuff along, but I also want to make sure that we have adequate time at the next meeting to discuss the wind farm panel discussion. With that, Charlie, we're going to go to the pollinator garden, old business C.
Yes, pardon me. The pollinator gardens proposal is really not anything that's going to be mandatory with fees, fines, or anything like that. It's really a sense of the city as to what we would like our city to be. I've suggested that we aim for a goal of being known as the pollinator capital of the beaches, or the pollinator capital of Delaware, or some such thing to mark us off as outstanding in supporting the butterflies, bees, and other pollinators that make those critters get a chance to survive. They are in their populations have been declining, and they're vital to agriculture and our economy. So the proposal would be that we would do an educational campaign talking about pollinator gardens, and then encourage, or even perhaps some kind of mandate about the city doing a better job of having pollinator gardens instead of just grass wherever they want to throw grass up, because grass is not helpful for pollinators. Black-eyed Susans and purple coneflowers and other things like that are helpful to pollinators. And to the extent that we can plant more of those pollinator-friendly plants and get rid of the grass lawns to the extent possible, that's the thrust of the pollinator garden proposal. I didn't have a printout of it here with me. Anybody else have help me out with what we were talking about with the pollinator proposal? I'll pull up my written proposal, if that helps.
Was it Liz Lingo, I think, said that they were working on an area on the end of State Street, that she was going to take the grass out and plant some more plantings there, and it is coming along.
It is beautiful.
Yeah, it
I
looks
wanted to
great.
say
So I
something
think the
about
city
that,
should get a
too.
little pat on the back for that, yeah.
Yeah, that is so neat, and
Yeah,
I
they
know
did a
there
great
was a
job.
problem before because, there wasn't water and this type of thing, but, I mean, that's really neat. It's looking scroungy now, but that's the way pollinator gardens are.
Well, and that's one of the things that, Charlie, we were going to focus on is signs to identify that, hey, these are pollinator gardens. They're not supposed to look as I think one would expect them to look. They are going to look a little unkempt and.
Sure. That's,
I did want to point out Ann, could you pull up the screen again? Tomorrow, Rehoboth Beach Main Street and Rehoboth and Bloom will be making a presentation to the mayor and commissioners. They've received funding to do some plantings, and I don't want to, this is their presentation for tomorrow, so I don't want to go through the whole thing, but they are redoing this section next to the canal and the museum. And I did ask, this is a little, another visual of it, and I did ask if this would be a pollinator garden, because I think I incorrectly stated it would in the past. So I do want to correct. It will not be a pollinator garden. They may have a few things that attract pollinators, but they've been advised it is too close to the road to truly be a pollinator garden. It would do more harm than good. So I just wanted to correct my previous statement on that. And they will be making this presentation tomorrow at the 2 o'clock meeting. Thanks, Sam.
all right.
Another portion of the pollinator garden proposal was to try to encourage people, or even for the city perhaps, to mandate a reduction, if not elimination, of pesticides that kill the pollinators. I know a lot of people would like to get rid of the mosquitoes, but when you do, you often kill off the monarch butterflies. So I don't know quite how we want to handle that. Is that a educational campaign only, or is that something that's directing the city to do our bidding, or what do you think?
The way that I see this is we could certainly do a resolution that is capturing everything we want to accomplish, and with the city's help, accomplish it. I think we need to utilize resources on the city's website. We need to utilize Main Street. We need to make sure that as the city arborist is talking to contractors and homeowners about landscaping, that she has the resources to provide them information. So if we wanted to put this in a resolution, I think that's great, but I think it's up to us to follow through on the education piece and the resource piece.
I feel the education should come before the enforcement, yeah. Yeah, the encouragement in education.
I do not see there being any appetite to turn this into an ordinance which can be enforced.
Yeah,
I
had
could be
none.
wrong, and if you guys feel like you want to make that effort, I'm happy to. I just don't, I don't think there's an appetite there.
I think it would be tough going to make it an enforceable
Yeah.
ordinance.
That's what I was thinking. It's mostly educational. What my proposal that I saw written up here was focusing on three things: native plants to encourage people to do native plants, education about native plants, pesticide use, and physical planting of the gardens, encouraging people to plant the gardens, not just mow your grass.
Right.
So how would you like to proceed, Charlie? Do you
Well,
want to put this in a resolution
it would be a
format?
resolution, not as opposed to a code change or anything that would be enforceable.
I think that would be fine. And attached to that resolution, I would put in an action plan on how we plan to educate and inform the public.
There are some websites here from other states that have similar programs. Could be part of the educational program as well, to see what other states have done.
Does everyone think that's a good way to proceed, is
I think so.
putting what the proposal that Charlie has put together in a resolution form
Yes.
and move it forward?
Okay, I'll make this a resolution.
Okay. And Charlie, I'll send you some examples on some resolutions that we've done in the past.
Well, that'd be helpful.
Next on the agenda is the discussion and any action regarding, I'm sorry, is there any public comment on the pollinator gardens? Okay. Next is item D, the non-idling policy. I'll mention again, several years ago, the city of Rehoboth Beach voted on a resolution encouraging people not to idle, but it was just that, a resolution, not an ordinance. There was absolutely no enforcement component to it. And what is being recommended by this committee is to put that into an ordinance format, so there can be enforcement. I still think that we've not done a good enough job educating people and signage. But I think at this point, this is probably the proper thing to do. Many other municipalities are doing it. And given the climate change and sea level rise, this is the thing to do. So, Heather, you put this proposal together. Do you want to talk through it?
Yeah. I also want to add that at our last, or not last meeting, the meeting before, we did hear from a couple of members of the public who were expressing their concerns about vehicles idling outside their property, and that it was, causing air quality problems and directly coming into their homes, and that the resolution wasn't really enough, that they felt like we needed to take it further. And this has kind of been on our agenda for a while, but that was sort of what prompted us to take this to the next level and draft it in more of a code way. So most of this information I did not make up. If you look further down, you'll see where I copied most of the ideas from research from other cities, which is at the bottom of the page. But just so you know where this is coming from. I did sort of take the best of both worlds. Of course, here in Rehoboth, we are a very unique city, so we can't be New York City, and we're not really Philadelphia either. So I tried to, especially in coming up with the 3 consecutive minutes, there were some places that had 0, and there were some places that had 5 minutes, and there were some places that had 3 minutes. 3 minutes seemed reasonable. That's, of course, up for any conversation. Again, the $100 fine was sort of copied from other municipalities. I did try to make the exceptions as streamlined as possible. There's the law from Wilmington goes on for over a page of all the different forms of exceptions, and I tried to just pick the ones that were applicable here in our city and put them in a condensed form. But if anybody feels like there are more exceptions than that, we can certainly add to that list. Again, the proposal is just in the format that I understood that the mayor and commissioners wanted to see. And I think one of the really most important things, again, is going to be the public outreach. And if we do end up passing this law, we really need to not just slap people with fines, but make everybody aware that how important this is, how it impacts our homeowners, and why we're doing it with a public outreach campaign.
One thing that comes to mind for me is pets in vehicles.
I guess I didn't include that because I don't think you should leave your pet in a car by themselves, no matter what. Oh, you mean if the pet is in the car with you?
Yeah, if the pet, if, I don't know, let's say my dog's in the car and I go into, I don't know, Grotto's to pick up a pizza or something, like,
Oh, yeah, I
And
don't think
it's
that's
hot out.
ever a good idea to leave your car. I personally wouldn't want to do that because I would never leave my pet in a running car in hot weather, but if you guys want to take that up, go ahead.
yeah, I see people do it all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, I think
I mean, what if your
Tesla,
car like conks out and then your dog's stuck in the hot car?
Tesla has
I know, they have that
a
fancy dog setting, I know.
dog notice thing. Because
That guy
people
thought
can't tell that
everything.
the vehicle's on, and they think a dog is in
Yeah,
there.
and they'll break your window to
They'll
get the
break
dog
it.
out because they don't know that it's, 60
Well,
degrees in there, dog's chilling out.
And what about refrigerated vehicles that are delivering food and stuff?
Yeah, I guess that would fall under two. The vehicle's engine is used to operate loading or processing device, so I guess the air conditioning would be a processing device.
Okay.
On the other hand, I've seen lots of trucks that got an air conditioner unit to try to keep their produce or whatever cool, and then they leave the back end open while they're unloading stuff, and so all the heat's coming in there anyway. Why should they idle just to have cooling power being thrown away? If they were to have kept the back gate closed, that would make more sense to me, that they're trying to keep whatever they've got refrigerated, but most of them don't. They just leave the back gate open and unload stuff and load it, and so I wouldn't be in favor of granting them an exemption. They're one of the big problems, right out in front of Dogfish Head. Big trucks come up there all the time, and they're unloading, and they keep idling.
And seriously, I mean, we all know, how quickly does food get bad? I mean, after 5 minutes, and you're delivering things after 10 minutes. I mean, even a bottle of milk, it's okay. It's in a cold place, and then you start up your truck again. I think that's an excuse.
I was rereading.
So what I'm hearing, you guys are suggesting that there should not be an exception for
Loading or processing.
loading or processing?
I don't think there should be an exception.
Excuse me, basically copied that from all the other cities. Excuse me, they all have exceptions for that. Excuse me, I'm choking on my water.
Should we hear from members of the public? Please. If you could just say your name again and
Paul Warren, 53 Surf Avenue, an observation on trucks loading and unloading with air conditioning equipment, usually food. And it gets back to the issue of noise. They are very, very loud, those trucks. And I really can't address what it takes to keep their food cool, but I do know is that if you are sitting in any place along Rehoboth Avenue for any length of time, particularly in the morning, your ears are as sensitive as mine, you will move because they are so loud. My guess is that technology, I hope, will someday improve, but it's, again, it comes back to the issue of the noise ordinance probably for the city of Rehoboth. But in any event, I wanted to point that out as another element. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else?
If I may reply, Paul, I think a lot of the more recent cars have the stop, turns off the engine feature And of course, that's true for electric cars. They don't use anything, and it's just not a problem. But for hybrids, most of them come to a stoplight or stop sign, it turns off the engine. Same if you get out of your car, it's gonna turn off the engine for you. But older models of cars, and trucks, a lot of them, are still having the problem of idling and pollution and noise and all that we've talked about.
Commissioner, one thing I didn't mention is what we talked about previously was possibly having somebody from the Rehoboth Police Department come and take a look at this, because they're ultimately the ones who will have to issue fines and make the decision on the spot. Were you idling more than you're supposed to, and what are the exceptions, and how do I evaluate this? So I think it would be really good to get their input on this as well. I didn't think it belonged in here, and I forgot to mention it, but it is important.
I think you asked me to do that, and I think I forgot. I will have the chief or one of the lieutenants weigh in on it. Any other comments? All right. With that, we've got a little bit of time to talk about the straw-free initiative and other related items such as single-use plastic and styrofoam. Nettie, did we?
I can't believe that we're still dealing with this. I thought that we'd made our proposal to the commissioners. I mean, I don't know why we're still discussing this.
We never solidified anything into
Never
an,
solidified
into an ordinance or an official recommendation.
Okay.
I think we were waiting on the state to,
Yeah, I think we were waiting on the state's decision,
and it was blocked in
it
the
was,
Senate.
yeah, it was rejected in the
Oh,
Senate.
okay.
It came close to passing, but didn't get passed.
Okay.
We were
Yeah.
thinking if that passed, it would save us the effort of having to do something here because it would be a statewide law.
Okay.
Now, we may want to decide, we'll just adopt exactly what they had in their last draft as something that we could adopt in the city.
I
or-
proposed exactly what they had in their last draft, and we passed it as a city, and maybe the state will follow us. Hopefully.
Well, why don't you, at the next meeting, why don't you bring that language for us to
Okay.
consider?
I'll need to check with you, Charlie, about the exact language if I could, because I haven't kept it.
So with that, then I'll go to new business A, and I'd like, Nettie, if you could just,
Simply.
well, let me first say this. I'm gonna do committee member comments and move to item 8, because I'd like to give a little bit of an update, and then I will let you go to new business A to give a little preface on that. So
Okay.
it gives us a little highlight so we can talk more about it in depth at another meeting. So I'd like to, on Saturday, SOLA 3 had a very good workshop series. They had Tony Pratt from DNREC, James Lee from DNREC, Division of Climate and Coastal Energy. They had Danielle Swallow from Delaware Sea Grant, Marine Advisory Service, Stephen Smaler from DNREC, Division of Water, talking about lakes. And there was one other speaker I'm drawing a blank on. It was a very
Swallow. Her name was Swallow.
Swallow. It was a very good presentation. And one of the DNREC folks, James Lee, focused on the climate action plan that the state has adopted. And as you know, we gave our recommendation to the mayor and commissioners many months ago for us to get some guidance to start developing that plan for the city of Rehoboth Beach. I met with the mayor and the city manager just a few days ago to get an update on where we stand for that, because it was just kind of sitting stale. And one of the challenges was, well, how do we pay for this? How do we implement it? And one of the questions that I asked to Mr. Lee on Saturday was, well, you kind of have this language in the state's code or a plan that is very vague about providing municipalities with monies. And it's unclear whether it's for the development, the implementation, or both. So I've been in communication with Mr. Lee at DENREC, and he's helping me navigate some of that. And the mayor and city manager are willing to bump this up so we can start developing a plan. Once I can solidify some, and I think we would prefer that it be a consultant that navigates us through this with the input from this committee. So we're working on that, the mayor, the city manager, myself, with the help of DENREC. So I just wanted to update you on that. The second thing is what I would very much, I think for us to be able to accomplish things, I would like at least each of us on this committee to be a liaison to another committee or organization. Like, I'd love for one of us to be the connection with Main Street, one of us to be the connection with the Trees and Green Infrastructure Committee, one of us to connect with the Chamber of Commerce, one of us to be the connection with SOLA 3, and any other environmental groups that we can think of. And I think every time we're talking about a specific topic, and maybe even one with the homeowners association, so that every time that we're talking about a specific topic, that person on the committee is charged with getting feedback from this particular group.
Great idea.
And
Great idea.
I woke up this morning and I'm like, I don't know why I thought of this sooner, but I really
It is a
think,
great idea.
I think it'll help us going forward in accomplishing what this committee wants to accomplish.
I think so too.
So I don't want to, we can't talk about it now. I'm just giving you an update on what I would like to see. So at the next meeting, I would like to identify specific liaisons to each relevant committee.
So do you want us to
Think
of
of
a committee
it,
we'd
yep.
like to
Yep.
liaison?
Oh, that's a natural.
Does that include the storm sewer committee? I remember we had a
It would,
liaison.
anything that you think
We might have to do
would
two.
be relevant, I think we should have a liaison. With that, I'm going to go back to Nettie to give a very, very, very short, brief overview of
I'll try to be short.
Business A.
It's a huge idea, though, and Ed, I really appreciated your question at SOLA the other day about the monies and so on. I thought that was very appropriate. There's the elephants in the room. We're dealing with lots of elephants in the room, and not just low-hanging fruit like we were talking about before, because as we all know, this summer it's become quite obvious that, that global warming is upon us. And there's never been more traffic. And just riding my bike, coming into town any time of day, particularly even early afternoon, it's a dangerous procedure. You don't even have a place to go beside the trucks. There's idling, there are diagonal cars coming out. This is walking or biking, and it's huge, as well as all the emissions which are causing our global warming. And it struck me like a lightning bolt when I heard, and I think several of us heard, Charlie, you probably too, from former member Stuart Martins, who went to take a bus ride from Shuttle Road, to go from Shuttle Road to the boardwalk, and could not believe that when you go from Shuttle Road to the boardwalk, that you have to take the whole loop. And I understand why the buses, the DART buses, and many of them now are electric, so it's fantastic. But that they go the entire loop all the way to Lewis and back, and it's really not very efficient. And we see both parking lots, both on one in Lewis and on one going into one from Shuttle Road are almost empty and very underused, whereas our traffic, as we all know, is overused. And so it just struck me there's a correlation. There needs, if we have more ridership, it's got to be more efficient. It's got to make a loop to Lewis and back, or to Cape and Lopen and back, to the boardwalk and back from Shuttle Road, as well as the loop. The loop is necessary. But so there are movable parts to this, but there's got to be a need, there's got to be a demand. And I don't think there's going to be a demand for usage of the buses until there's a little bit of deprivation going on within the city. And that is, and this is just a thought, and I know this has been considered before, having a walking, biking mall on Rehoboth Avenue, Baltimore, and Delaware up to 2nd Street, allowing people to come in and do their deliveries in the morning before 10 o'clock, allowing people that are handicapped have a handicap sticker to, come up and bring people up to the boardwalk. I don't know what details we'd get into about motorized vehicles. Of course, the bus would have to be able to come up and bring people to the boardwalk. But there are many, many movable parts. And it would be, so if people couldn't go all the way to the boardwalk, would they use the bus more? It's working with all of that. It's working with the bus drivers and what's going on with DART. And I would just like for us to consider it because I think it's an elephant in the room. And I know this would be probably years in working out, but there are a lot of movable parts, and I would like to be part of a group that could deal with this. I know it's really different, but why is there so much traffic and nobody's using the buses? Very few people are using the buses.
Well, thank you for that, Nettie. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up the climate action plan is because I think there's a lot of overlap in what could be included in a climate action plan and some of the other things we're working on. So thank you for giving that little overview, and we'll talk more about it at another meeting. I'm going to go back to see if there's any additional committee comments.
If I may, just as in response to Nettie's, do we have a transportation parking committee already for the city?
We do, and I also chair that.
Great, well, maybe Nettie could be our
fantastic.
liaison to that committee.
And we've got a member of the public that is also on that committee. And if you care to stay, our meeting is at 2 p.m. And we will be going over loading zones and delivery trucks and stuff at today's meeting. Any other questions to Nettie or additional committee comments? Well, I want to thank the committee and members of the public for speaking up. I think we are making some good progress. And again, please, if you're able to come, I'm very excited for the offshore wind panel special meeting that we're going to have on the 27th at 9 a.m. And any additional members of the public? No. So our next meeting will be on October 20th at 10:30 a.m.
Tomorrow at 2 p.m., the pollinator gardens stuff that you mentioned, that's going to be held here?
Here, yep, 2 p.m., regular commissioner meeting. Anything else? Going once, going twice? Okay. I'm adjourning the